What's going on, everybody? This is Joe from Coilcraft. We're sitting here. We're going to do a voiceover of this trip that Kristin, Rhett, and I did to the Fur and Fangs Exotic Expo in Dandridge, Tennessee. So there's quite a few people here. This was a Sunday, so it wasn't super busy, but there's enough people there to make it pretty noisy. So this first table, we just walked in here, is busy enough that we couldn't really get in there. So we kind of bounced back and forth. But I was looking at some Savannah monitors there. There I am. But now, ooh, I like this fat, chunky one here in the middle. And of course, Christian was like, well, you kind of want a Black Dragon water monitor. Maybe we should wait, not be impulsive. Uh, those of you who follow me or know me, I'm pretty impulsive. Then we got Shay's serpents over here. She sees us pretty much every time. She's like, "Oh, you want to take some of those home with you and uh, talk about some ball pythons." But she's asking if we had anything at home, and we're like, "Yeah, we got reticulated." So she's like, "Oh yeah, we got some enclosures here, maybe for juveniles, because I think they just had the 6 foot ones." She's real nice. She had some lychee geckos I was interested in. Now, country bugs here, they were a bit on the pricey side this time for some dubias. So I'll probably end up putting in an order on those. But unfortunately, they were out of large and extra large rats, which was unfortunate because I need large and extra large rats. So I was talking to the guy here, and he was telling me that he had some double extra large. So he pulls some out, and I contemplated whether or not Voodoo could eat those. I'm pretty confident she could, but I was uncomfortable just, you know, trying to feed her these huge, huge rats. So, although he probably could have done it, I figure I'll put in an order to Rodent Pro or something at some point. Because we're at the point that we have to put an order. I have a bunch of stuff that's just too small for the snakes right now. Little Slovene, he can eat a couple of those, but look at those monsters, big old rats. Um, I think definitely think she could handle that, but I don't want to push it. So I think I'd rather just go with a large or an extra large. But I notice even on Rodent Pro right now, they didn't have a big selection of large, so there must be a shortage right now. This guy over here, well, never mind. I guess I cut that out. We didn't really hold too much, but he had a couple Burmeses and some boas. Now, these people, they're always at the shows we've been to. I forget their name. I'll have to get their name next time we go. But they have a lot of cool stuff. They usually have some arachnids and some different type of arachnids, not just the same stuff. Like I've seen them with African whip scorpions. Then they have some of the regulars too, but they never have a huge selection on animals. They do a lot of the other trinkets and things of that nature, which is pretty cool. Rhett here, he's looking at some of the like insects and arachnids, but he's getting into pinning some insects himself. So he's been learning that. And I know at some of these shows we have vendors that have preserved insects. So he might look into getting some of those and learn how to pin them. Right here, we're looking at some of the cool stuff they had. They actually, I think this booth had the bird. Yeah, they had a parrot sitting up top. We ended up adjusting the camera here just because I felt like I wasn't showing enough of the table. So next time we'll point to even more down, so it's showing more of the table. But I saw they had a carpet python, boa, and some reticulateds of various sizes. Pretty neat. Nothing that really caught my eye. Oh, apothecary. That's what they're called again. They had a little rhino iguana in this tub. There's the bird, parrot up there, the macaw. I didn't get a very good picture of them. He was over here feeding all his snakes. They're feeding him live pinkies. So I try not to get that on camera. Although live pinkies and other live feedings is just part of owning reptiles and the way life is, I will probably not do live feedings on our channels. Just frozen thawed. Now, if you remember, in a couple videos ago, we had a rather large, I think it was I'm just gonna say it's a rhino iguana that we got to pet, take pictures of. Ooh, some good old spin around. Now over here, I was pointing out the fact that they had a water monitor in there. Didn't really get a good shot of him. He was obviously pretty popular. And then I was pointing at that Bigfoot 3D printer saying that was Rhett. They had some beautiful birds here. I think they had, I think it's called Harlot or something like that. Beautiful bird. Um, I don't have the capacity right now to take care of a bird. I've heard that it's like taking care of a toddler. Not something I want to take on at the moment. As much as I love birds and I like hearing them sing, I don't think it's in the cards for me or Kristen at the moment. I like the Indian ringnecks and some of the cockatoos. Even the cockatiels are pretty cool. There's a lot of ball pythons and crested geckos at this show. I kind of glaze over those a little bit, along with some of the bearded dragons. Those are things we're not interested in too much, and I feel like they're just overdone at all the shows. Now, here, this is a selection of some colubrids and some cresties and leopard geckos. We have a little glance over to them, and I think this is the table that little blizzard over there is digging, digging. Yeah, point them out right there. Had some decent prices on these. No real special morse or anything that I noticed. Came over and looked at this permission pythons over here, see what they had. They just had some more 3D printed stuff, some random trinkets and whatever. We kind of blew past their ball python table. The Reptile Collective is actually who we purchased Hexus, our albino carpet python from. And he usually dabbles in colubrids, and he had some pretty cool stuff there. We come back and we talk to him later in the show. He even had some boas over here. He had some ball pythons, some boas, and just some other things on the table. Some pretty neat stuff. He had some looks like some blue tongue skinks there, if I could see that correctly. Yeah, blue tongue skinks. Chris and I are interested in getting into some boas, but we're looking at maybe some IMG boas, sunglow, things of that nature. Right here, I'm trying to decide which way I want to go. I was gonna go look at permission pythons, but I just feel like the ball pythons are oversaturated right now. This area is pretty cool. They're doing isopods and springtails, and although I don't have any bioactive setups yet, I want to do our arachnids and some bioactive setups. So I was talking to Kristen about getting some springtails and isopods in the future, and you could get really fun with those with all the different isopods. There's just some really cool ones. Over here, he has a Ville Chameleon on his hat that's not coming off, and I was like, he said no, and he laughed about it. They had some Ville Chameleons over there. Looks like some more crested geckos. Over here, I was talking about how I like some of the art. Now here we have a whole table full of 3D printed stuff. And as you guys know, if you've been following along, I am into 3D printing. A lot of the stuff I 3D print is resin. So I do some of the FDM printing, not as much though. I would like to get a bigger machine so I could do the multicolor stuff like you see on this table. That might be in the cards in the future, but as of right now, it is not. Then we're coming back to the front of the show. And I'm sitting here talking to Chris and like, wow, this is pretty small. I thought it was going to be bigger. And then I remembered when I first walked in, the guy told me that it's on both sides and that there's a back pathway back there. She was like, yeah, Joe, come on. Weren't you listening? And I was like, oh, yeah, duh. But we came back to this front table that we couldn't get access to when we first came in because there's so many people around. But we come over here looking, and they had some cool stuff I hadn't seen in a while, like a cat gecko up here. Chris and I are really interested in doing those as a breeding project later on, but not in the cards for us today. We ended up being very good, and we did not get anything. Look at that beautiful cat gecko. They're awesome. They only had one though. And of course, you have your leopard geckos and everything on here. But they also had just some other cool stuff on the table. They had a bunch of arachnids, amphibians. Right there, they have legless lizards that I pointed out to Kristen. Those are awesome. I'd love to have some legless lizards. Um, let's see, they had some blue tongue skinks, just a bunch of various lizards and stuff. Now, I always get ahead of myself. I'm looking in one area while Kristen and Rhett are also looking. I start looking down the table where I'm not even at. But look, they got some cool stuff. They got some boas there, some sand boas, hognose. I didn't get on camera, but they have this little tiny, tiny tricolor hognose, and it's so cute. Right here, I'm pointing at this three larger enclosures with some has some Amazon tree boas in there, and green tree python. I slowly move my way around, and I'm looking. I'm telling Kristen, I point out all sorts of stuff. I'm just like, look at this, isn't this one neat? This one's so cute. I do that every table. I like everything. But what I like is when I see stuff that I don't see very often anymore. Yeah, there's the two Amazon tree bows, and they had that little tiny green tree python sitting in that big tub. Then we got into some amphibians, but here's where I see something I like. They had some Ghost Rider millipedes, and the reason why I like those is because Chris and I were talking about getting some, and not Ghost Riders in particular, but just a millipede. And we learned about Ghost Rider millipedes today. Kristen points out that albino Chinese bullfrog, I think it was, he's super cool. He has black eyes, all white, just kind of chilling. And then you have that Colorado toad digging behind him. He's pretty cool too. I think I've had a couple types of frogs, but I've never had a toad or a bullfrog. I think those would be cool to have. Now they had a very large selection on this table of arachnids and things of that nature. They had some dune, I think it was dune desert scorpions, maybe. They had a really big assortment of arachnids at this table. A lot of it you really can't see. You might see some of the spiders or tarantulas in there, but um, it just looks like there is a lot of dirt at the table. You see there in that like beige one, they had a desert scorpion. He was pretty cool. But I have been interested in getting a scolopendra or a centipede. I want one of the purple ones, but I've never housed the centipede, so I don't know. But I stood there and talked to Christian about it a while, so I was like, let's just move on. I kind of cut some of that out there because I stood there for a while talking. But in that back one I pointed out was a little baby sulcata tortoise, and he's cute. I'm always interested in tortoises. This was a pretty cool area. They had a bunch of monitor lizards and chameleons. as we go down through here, I point them out. Like Kristen and Rhett can't read. I don't know why. I feel like I have to point everything out, but I just get so excited. I was like, "Oh, look, a peach throat monitor," and so on and so forth. But not great shots of these. Sorry about that. First time wearing a body cam style in here. I might just have to carry it from now on. They had some pretty cool iguanas in that one. Kristen points them out. They had like a red, a blue, a albino. Now I want a pectinata, pied pectinata to be precise, not so much a banana, but I would take a banana pectinata. But I don't see them very often, so I've been looking on Morph Market. Now we're talking about the iguanas here again, and I point out the blue one in the back. I wanted a blue one for the longest time, but I don't know if I want to take up the space for an iguana because I'm going to get probably a black dragon water monitor at some point. Sorry about all the spinning. It's just me navigating here, and I didn't want to cut out everything 'cause you can get a view of things. There's Shea Serpents again. I kind of take a glance over her enclosures. They're always nice. I'd love to have some, but I'm just not in the situation to have or get those at the moment. There's a company that makes a cool condo unit that I'm looking at getting that has it's like 4x2 by 1, I believe, and it's a 6 condo high, so it has 6 enclosures built into one on rollers. I was thinking about getting something like that to hold me over for a little while and then graduate the reticulates up on that. And over here, there's a bunch of crested geckos and look like some Cuban anoles. Just, more of the same. I point these ones out because they're super tiny and super cute. And of course, Kristen's like, "Oh, they're so cute." And once again, over here, we have some 3D printed hides and decorations. Now we go back over here to Reptile Collective, and we're looking at his millipedes and his snails. Look at all those ones trying to escape that she's putting back. Now we were over here for quite a while. We talked to him about uh, all the Ghost Rider millipedes and the African giant millipedes. And Kristen was brave and she finally decided to hold one. And you'll see a little bit of footage of her doing that here in just a minute. But she's looking, she's like, hmm. Now they have red legs, orange legs, and silver legs. And I like the ones with silver legs. Kristen at first was saying she liked the ones with red legs. That's what I'm pointing out there. It's like, oh, look, there's all the silver legs. And she was just like, yeah, I kind of like the red leg ones. So I'm over there looking, and I was like, why don't you ask to hold one? Because she was contemplating it. So finally, she was kind of building up the nerve, I guess. I finally asked, hey, is there any way she can hold one, kind of check it out? And of course, she was like, yeah. So we started off with the African giant, just because these Ghost Rider ones are semi-arboreal, so they tend to have longer legs and kind of grip on. They describe it like pulling Velcro off when you're trying to get them off of you. So we went with the African giant first, and with that being said, it never unwrapped. It stayed as a ball. As soon as he put that millipede on her, it pooped on her, and she didn't care. But it was, just like big old. There it goes, big old pool of nastiness. And she still held him for a little bit, and then we ended up swapping out. And of course, we got a paper towel and cleaned up, and then we went over to the Ghost Rider. That's the one we're interested in the most. We almost left with one. I tell you, we almost left with. Again, this is my first time doing a voiceover. I went out and bought a microphone just for this. So if it needs some changes, qualities, tips, or tricks, just let me know. I also have kids and dogs and everything in the background. So if I have this set up, so hopefully it blocks out most of that. But if not, I'm sorry. That's part of all those snails escaping. But here it is, back to him. This is how you can tell we're really contemplating it because we're just back and forth. So yeah, he's looking and he kind of messes with it for a minute. And I believe we start to walk off here in a minute. And he's like, "Well, I got this one out. Do you want to go ahead and give it a hold just in case?" And she's like, "Yeah, if you don't mind." So and then she got stuck over there holding him for a minute. When I said she got stuck, she was enjoying herself. Me, I'm an impatient person and I'm always moving around. So I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go check out the jumping spiders and I'm gonna go do this." And while she was holding her millipede, also, talk to her about um the vendor. Forget her name, unfortunately. Thanks. Mm. I think it's Itsy Little Spiders. Next time I go, I see her at every show, so I'll have to put her card on the channel next time. But I was talking to her about some of her Scolopendra centipede she has on offer up here as well. But here he is telling Kristen about the Ghost Rider millipedes. Of course, he pulled the one out with the silver legs. He said that that is as big as her forearm. Forearm, man, forearm. I'm just leaving that in there. I have no shame. I talk funny sometimes. Look, yeah, that thing's gripping onto all sorts of stuff. See, I already was like, he was like, "Hey, you want to go ahead and hold it?" So Kristen ran over there. She's like, "Yeah." Look at all those legs on that one with the orange. There she is. She was nervous about it. She was trying to tell us at first that she would only do it if somebody did it first. So we continue here. She's holding them and she's excited. I had wanted to hold one, but I got caught up in the moment and I forgot to hold it. Oh, this is okay. But there she is talking about the scolopendras. Um, I don't know. I was telling her about the purple one that I want. There's like purple one with orange legs. I don't know if it's Borneo or what it is. But yeah, we really, I think, did a good job of not going home with anything. There is at least 4 or 5 things that I wanted, as usual. Here's Kristen trying to get it off. They said it's just like Velcro, so you have to let it crawl off or have somebody help you get it off. So I went back over here, started looking at the spiders, the little jumping spiders, and they had some pretty cool enclosures over here, all 3D printed decorations in the back. And I was talking to Rhett how we could probably print something like that if we wanted, but of course, I would not copy anybody's stuff because, that's their business. That's how they do their thing. I'd want to come up with my own things. But I was looking at that coffin enclosure down here for my pink toe tarantula. But since it's arboreal, as Rhett was saying, yeah, that's be a good one. I said, well, what about the sliding top? What if it builds its web right there? I wanted to shoot this. This is us just going through the back hallway, going to the second half of the show, which tended to be more exotics and other types of animals rather than just reptiles. It's pretty cool. This was the rattery over here. She had some adult rats and some juvenile or baby rats, and we'll look at those in just a second. They had puppies over here, so of course I ran over here to look at the puppies. They had some, I believe, Shih Tzus, and they had some. Look at that little wiener dog looking at me. And then they had Frenchies over here, and I was looking at that spotted Merle one. Of course, I'm not in the market for one, but in that cage, they have a Cotamundi, which is pretty cool, but they have it so nobody can see it. So I didn't get any closer look at that, but pretty neat. I swing back by around here because Kristin loves her rats. So she's looking. I told Kristin there's some babies over there. And of course, this rat does some acrobatics here. Ring. We laugh about it. The lady said, that's how it happened before. We didn't know they could breed so young. Over here, lady had a Joey sitting in her lap in that little bag, kangaroo Joey. And then over here, they had a badger. I believe that's a badger. And he's just kind of chilling and he goes plopping down over here. So the Simbi Exotics, they had some cool stuff. They had some sugar gliders here. Not sure what they had in the middle. Kind of look. I know there's a sign, but I really didn't see anything. Hey, if you look closely, this guy has a little baby possum on his shoulder. Chris and I really want a possum. They got some hedgehogs too. Right here, I'm talking about how one day we'll have him, and he's like, yeah, he's up here on my shoulder. He's super cute little possum. He's sleeping up there. Um, but the only thing about possums is they don't have a very long lifespan. So we'd hate to get attached to one and then when the time comes, lose them. This guy had more crested geckos with crested gecko kits. So we are just talking to him for a minute, and the other vendor, they had recognized us from the last show we went to in Knoxville. We're probably gonna have to get some business cards or something made up soon. So right here, we're looking at all the different bird toys as we walk by, and we talk about how they can be used for rat toys as well. Looks like they have a bunch of bird products here, but they have some avians and other birds here. Some, I think it's Indian ringnecks and just some other types of birds. I'm not big on birds, so I don't know much about them. Although I'd love having one, it's just not in the cards for me. And then they had some decorations right here, different trinkets of sorts. Excuse me, yawning. Kristen's gonna be mad I didn't cut that out. But as we come up here, they had some bunnies and some quails, and they're cute. I like that white fluffy one right there, the albino one. That one is cute. Made sure to point that out to Kristen. I didn't get a good picture of the quail. They're pretty neat though. Had some calico rabbits here. I believe they're both types of Rexes. Again, yeah, mini Rex lines. It says. Um, Never really been big on any type of rodents. I came back because Kristin was, oh, how cute, a calico. She talking to it. She really liked them. Anything soft, fluffy, and cute, she loves. Then they're selling some pickle products. This was a little bit different. They had some fish. I thought it was pretty cool. They had one of the red-tailed catfish. They had some coral clusters or mounts or frags, whatever you want to call them. I think they're called frags. And they had some other stuff. There, I overheard them talking about how one pet store shut down and they kind of took their place. A couple little snakes in here. This next table was pretty cool. They had some Neuromastics, and I think they had some leopard geckos, and they're pretty nice. They're asking us what we had at the house, and we're telling them about the reticulated pythons and the carpet pythons. And they're like, "Well, we don't have any snakes. Are you interested in anything else?" And I said, "Well, I'm always interested in everything." So, of course, they had that little sulcata down there. I bet you they took that in on a trade or something because it's the only one they have. But um, we talked about the Euromastics for just a minute. As we got down to this next table, it was ball python, so I kind of just passed it up. I'd had enough of the ball pythons for today. Once I went around this table, they had another table that had various different species of animals, and I kind of got the feeling that they're all wild caught. Wasn't sure. Actually, I'm speaking ahead. We came up on these rabbits. There's more rabbits, and there's another cool one in there, I think. I pointed out to Kristen. But most of them are normal, everyday Rexes. It's the next table with the orange tablecloth that I think had the wild or imported animals. And I'm not saying they did or they did not. And I'm not saying anything against people importing animals. But that's just not what I'm for. I want something established and captive born uh, here. I just have a hard time believing that somebody has so many different species and only just a couple of each one, um, without it being wild caught, traded, or something like that. Took a look, see what they had, and then we moved on from there. And I think we go over to the plant table next, which the plant table is cool. It's always interesting me. Chris and I really enjoy plants. We used to have a huge plant room with a bunch of super rare exotic plants that we had imported from Indonesia and other areas, and we had handpicked a bunch of stuff. But we had a really cold winter, and it killed off all of our plants. So we may get back into that and start selling cuttings and doing things of that nature. We're really big into orchids as well, but we already got a lot going on at the moment. And they have some 3D printed pots, and I think they had some. I'm not sure what these were. It says geckos. I'm assuming leopard geckos, things of that nature. Then from here, I think we decided that we wanted to go back to one of the original tables at the front and look at Ghost Rider millipedes again. And, we did end up going to look at those, and we didn't buy anything, like I said. But I don't know why we came back to look at over here. We had skipped it initially because it was all ball pythons. And nothing against people who love ball pythons, who breed ball pythons, or, that's your thing. It's just not for me. And I just feel like the market's overly saturated with ball pythons. They are everywhere. Every show is mostly ball pythons and crested geckos. Cockatiels, and I think they had some guinea pigs up here. This is Little Ball Peep. This guy over here, he had a few boas, and I think it was an Argentine boa that he had there. Real beautiful snake. He talked to us for just a couple minutes about, you know, last couple months he sold a lot of snakes, and just you don't see very much anymore at the shows. And we were talking about how most of it's either all about boas or all about pythons, uh, just the normal. If you frequent a lot of shows, in fact, I bet you if you're watching this video, you have been to several shows and you know exactly what I'm talking. This next vendor, she was not too friendly. We didn't really get a chance to talk to her. I'm sure she'd be friendly if we did talk to her, but she didn't really interact with us as we went by. She had a bunch of cool stuff. I was commenting on some of her Pac-Man frogs here, albino. I like the strawberry one, but then I saw some really cool looking colubrids down here, which was, well, I talked about the baby emperor scorpions first, and all the different other snakes I saw. It was just kind of cool. But I saw some scaleless rat snakes, I believe. They were super cute. I did notice a couple things were misidentified on here. Some saying that they're albino and they weren't albino. Um, so sure there's just a couple mistakes here. They had pretty good stock of things. There's several things I could have gone home with, but I'm sure those are probably retired breeders, if I had to guess. Well, guys, for the last little bit of the show, I think I'm just gonna put some elevator music on for you and let you listen to that, and just check out what else we saw. Again, I think we just end up going up to the front table we came in at and checked out some of those Ghost Rider millipedes and contemplate buying one, but we checked out some more arachnids first. I don't know. I've been getting more and more into arachnids. I'm kind of wanting a centipede, even though they still give me the creeps. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and family. We're still trying to grow our social media and YouTube presence. So help us out. Give us a like and a subscribe. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what we could do better. What would you like to see more? Anyways, thanks for checking out. Bye.